turn over to Brian. Before I do, the way, Andrew, I think of it, I think of an exempt security as a noun. It's a laundry list of exempt issuers. And the only thing that an exempt issuer can give birth to is an exempt security. I think of non-exempt securities as a verb. The security isn't exempt. It's the way I'm selling it. I'm selling it as a private placement. I'm not making a public distribution. So that's what I think of. Exempt issuers, exempt securities is a noun, a list. Exempt transactions are a verb about how we're selling them. I love Brian. I'm going to turn it over to Brian on his whiteboard, but I think that Brian's trick works for test purposes. Brian says when you see non-exempt, he thinks corporate securities. I can't imagine where that would mess you up. Brian?
Yeah, and again, because of the live stream format, this is going to be highly compressed into 3 minutes or so, right? So Dean is exactly right. These are concerning securities. There are basically only 2 classifications of securities. Exempt, we kind of know those. And non-exempt, we know those too, because that's just a fancy schmancy legal term for corporate. So these are corporate securities, stocks and bonds. That's all that's saying. Do stocks and bonds have to register? Of course they do, right? These do not have to be registered. Corporate stocks and bonds have to be registered, except if you do it in a rare situation where the transaction is either unsolicited or between financial institutions or it's in a private placement, right? So the security, they're just corporate stocks and bonds, would normally have to be registered, but because of these kind of rare situations, we say, okay, you can sell it unregistered. That's it.
Brian, I'll see if you like this. I may have shared this with you. This is not ready for prime time yet, Andrew. But Brian and I both in our previous lives were, senior instructors at a company called Kaplan. And I was a senior instructor and I would train other folks, Andrew. And one time I was training a new guy and I showed up to the class in Birkenstocks and shorts and, nice knit shirt. But then he said to me, he said, well, I thought Kaplan instructors have to wear blazers and ties. And I said, they do. And he said, well, you're not. I said, you're correct. I am exempt. I don't have to do any of that stuff. And then he said to me, well, what about me? I said, well, there are certain situations where you might not wear a blazer and a tie. If, for example, you're teaching in Scottsdale and it's 120 degrees, because of that class, that particular situation, no blazer, no tie. Perfect. But in general, it's just that class, that situation. Otherwise, blazer and tie. So that's how I kind of think of it, right? If I'm exempt, that means I'm never going to have to show up in a tie. By the way, then he said, well, I forget, we kind of got into it a little bit, Brian. I said, listen, the less competent you are, the more formally you want to be dressed. He goes, what's that mean? I said, well, I'm competent. I can show up in Birkenstocks and shorts. You need a blazer and a tie. All right. So I hope that was helpful. That was you, Andrew. I apologize, Andrew, for not getting you. Always feel free to put that back in the chat if we miss you somehow, some way. All right. Back to our comments. And let's see now if I can find where we left off.